I'm Isabelle Isabelle, one, youngest partner at a top Chicago architecture firm. But none of that mattered to my father. At his retirement gala, he stood on stage in front of 200 guests and said, "I owe everything to my sons." Then he paused, looked right at me, and added, "My daughter never had what it takes for real business." Applause erupts, a wave of validation for him, a tidal wave of humiliation for me. In that moment, something inside me finally breaks, so I stood up, walked to the stage, handed him a silver-wrapped box, and left. What he found inside changed everything. It wasn't revenge, it was the truth, finally unboxed. Before I tell you the full story, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. And if you've ever been the overlooked one in your own family, hit like and subscribe. This story is for you. Growing up as the only daughter of Gerald Isabelle meant living in a perpetual shadow end. My father, a titan who built Isabelle Industries from a $5,000 loan and sheer determination, had a singular vision of what mattered. A man provides, a man builds, a man leaves a legacy. He repeated it like scripture at dinner, words etched into the very fabric of our lives. He was born to working-class parents in Cleveland, worked his way through state college, and founded his manufacturing company at 241. By 35, he had regional dominance, and by 50, national recognition. His rags-to-riches story was legendary, as were his uncompromising standards and traditional values. And his traditional values, unfortunately, extended to gender roles. My earliest memory of being dismissed, of being told my place, happened when I was just 8 years old. We were at our grand dining table during a Sunday family dinner, a weekly ritual that usually involved Dad discussing business, always business one. He was deep into quarterly projections with Nathan and Daniel, who were 11 and 13 at the time, already being groomed as his successors. I, a curious kid, had overheard terms, had even researched a few in my father's dusty business journals, so I asked a question about inventory turnover, a phrase I'd just learned, and he laughed. A dismissive, jovial laugh that still echoes in my mind. "Isabelle," he chuckled, as if speaking to a child who had wandered into a grown-up conversation. "Why don't you help your mother with dessert? This is business talk." That was the first time I truly realized my gender determined my value in my father's eyes. And it certainly wouldn't be the last one. My mother, Eleanor, was the warmth in our often cold practical home. She was a former literature professor, a brilliant woman who had given up her career when Nathan was born to raise us two. She saw something different in me, something beyond the rigid confines of my father's world. She encouraged my interest in design and architecture from an early age. We'd spend hours together, just the two of us, as I constructed elaborate buildings from blocks, paper, anything I could get my hands on. "Your father builds things that function," she would whisper to me, her voice soft, full of understanding. "You build things that inspire." Her words were a balm, a secret language between us that affirmed my different path. Then at 16, breast cancer took her from us. Her death left a void no one, especially not my father, could fill. At her funeral, a day etched in my memory with unbearable clarity, while relatives offered condolences, I overheard my father speaking to his brother. His voice was low, but clear enough to reach my ears, clear enough to slice through the haze of my grief. "At least my boys can carry on the business," he said. "That's what matters in the end." I pretended not to hear, but those words crystallized what I had always suspected. In my father's world, I was an afterthought. My worth was tied to my ability to perpetuate his industrial empire, and as a girl, I simply didn't fit that mold. And it wasn't for lack of trying, not for lack of achievement. My academic accomplishments consistently outshone my brothers. I was valedictorian of my high school class, while Nathan and Daniel had been, well, average students. I earned a full scholarship to MIT for architecture, while they attended state schools on Dad's dime, scraping by with C's and occasional B's. None of it mattered to Gerald Isabelle. "Drawing buildings isn't a real business," he declared when I shared my acceptance to MIT's prestigious architecture program. "It's glorified art. No Isabelle has ever been an artist." That statement, delivered with the certainty of a man who believed he spoke truth, was a direct assault on my dreams. 3 incidents, beyond the early dismissals, truly defined our fractured relationship. The first was when I was 12. My science fair project, a detailed study on sustainable building materials, won state recognition. The award ceremony fell on a Wednesday evening. My mother, beaming with pride, was there, of course, squeezing my hand as I accepted my certificate and medal. My father, he was conspicuously absent. He was attending Daniel's junior varsity basketball game instead, even though Daniel spent most of it warming the bench. The message was clear. My achievements, my passions, were less important than his son's recreational pursuits. The second defining moment came after my mother's death. That overheard conversation at her funeral that cemented my place, or rather my lack of place, in the family hierarchy. It confirmed everything I feared. The third occurred at my MIT graduation. I'd been selected to give a student address for the School of Architecture. It was a monumental achievement, a culmination of years of hard work and dedication. My father arrived 20 minutes late, missing my speech entirely. He left immediately after the ceremony, checking his watch repeatedly during the brief photographs my mother's sister insisted on taking. Nathan has a meeting with potential investors, he explained, rushing away. The meeting was a prearranged lunch with a mid-level manager at a company Isabelle Industries already did business with. It was a thinly veiled excuse, another clear message that my accomplishments were secondary, disposable. My brothers, Nathan and Daniel, weren't malicious, not really. They were just complacent, comfortable in a system that so clearly benefited them. Occasionally, I'd catch Nathan watching me with something like guilt in his eyes. Once, after a particularly dismissive comment from my father about my hobby, Daniel awkwardly patted my shoulder. "You know how Dad is," he offered, as if that explained away a lifetime of neglect. It didn't. After graduation, I surprised everyone by declining the obligatory job offer at Isabelle Industries. That was a battle in itself, resisting the gravitational pull of the family business. Instead, I accepted an entry-level position at Schmidt & Wallace, a respected architecture firm specializing in sustainable urban development. "It won't last," my father predicted, his voice laced with patronizing certainty. "You'll be back asking for a real job within a year." 8 years later, I became the youngest partner in Schmidt & Wallace's 60-year history. My design for the Lakefront Commons, a mixed-use development incorporating renewable energy and community spaces, won the Hammond Award for Innovative Design, architecture's equivalent of an Oscar. My salary now exceeded both my brothers, though I never mentioned this fact to anyone in the family. It wasn't about flaunting. It was about proving something to myself. My father's response to each achievement was predictable, dismissal disguised as faint praise. "Lucky break," he said about my partnership. "Very nice," he commented when shown photos of my award-winning design, and then the inevitable qualifier. "It's not like running a real company with hundreds of employees," he remarked when a profile of me appeared in Architectural Digest, a prestigious publication that celebrated my work. It was as if he couldn't allow himself to acknowledge my success without diminishing it, without comparing it to his standard of real business. Our relationship settled into a polite distance. I saw him at major holidays and occasional family events. We exchanged pleasantries, carefully avoiding any substantive conversation. He'd ask perfunctory questions about my drawings, never remembering the names of my projects or recognizing their significance in my field. I stopped expecting more. I learned to live with the quiet disappointment, the invisible barrier between us. Until his retirement gala changed everything. The invitation arrived in an embossed envelope, heavy cream cardstock, elegant gold lettering, announcing the retirement of Gerald J. Isabelle, founder and CEO of Isabelle Industries. The venue, the Grand Marriott downtown Chicago. Dress code, black tie optional, 3 weeks' notice. I stared at it over breakfast in my lakefront condo, my coffee growing cold beside me. My boyfriend of 2 years, Julian, watched me from across the table. He understood the complicated terrain of my family relationships. As a corporate psychologist, he had keen insight into toxic workplace dynamics and recognized the chilling similarities in the Isabelle family structure. "Are you going to go?" He asked gently. "I should," I replied, though the thought created an immediate knot in my stomach. Later that day, my best friend Maya was less diplomatic during our weekly lunch. She'd witnessed too many Isabelle family interactions over our 15-year friendship. "He'll find a way to make it about your brothers," she warned, stabbing at her salad with a pointed fork. "Be prepared for Gerald to be Gerald. I tried to reason with myself, to hope for something different. It's his retirement, I mused, clinging to a sliver of optimism. Maybe he'll be reflective. People sometimes gain perspective at milestone moments. Maya's raised eyebrow conveyed her doubt better than any words could. The unexpected call from Nathan came that evening. "We're putting together a tribute video," he explained, his voice sounding a little strained. "Could you send some old family photos? Maybe write something about Dad for the montage?" Despite not being included in any of the planning for this supposedly momentous event, I spent hours digging through boxes of old photographs. I selected meaningful moments. Dad teaching me to ride a bike, his rare smile when I won a middle school design competition, a candid shot from Christmas when I was peeing, where he actually had his arm around my shoulder. I wrote a generous paragraph about his determination and vision. I described what I genuinely admired: his work ethic, his philanthropy. Even if it was primarily motivated by tax benefits, it was still beneficial. His ability to adapt to changing markets. I didn't mention our relationship. Some truths, I decided, didn't belong in a retirement tribute. Selecting an outfit required similar care. It wasn't just about looking good, it was about presenting myself. I finally settled on a tailored navy suit, conservative enough for a business function, but with architectural details in the lapels and cuffs that subtly reflected my professional identity. Professional, respectful, but not attempting to be something I wasn't. The question of a gift plagued me. What do you give a man who has everything material he could want, but has given you so little emotionally? Traditional retirement gifts seemed hollow: watches, golf accessories, fishing gear. None of them captured what I wanted to express, what I needed to express. The answer came during a visit to my mother's safety deposit box, which I'd maintained since her death. Among her jewelry and important documents, I found a sealed envelope with my name written in her elegant script. Inside, she had preserved several items for me: newspaper clippings of my early design contest wins, a beautiful letter expressing her pride in my determination, photographs of models I'd built as a child. "For Isabelle when she needs reminding of her worth," my mother had written on the envelope. In that moment, my gift took shape. It wouldn't be about him, it would be about me, about the truth of what I had become despite him. I spent the next week gathering additional items: my MIT diploma, my architecture license, award certificates, financial statements, press clippings about my most significant projects. I created a USB drive with a video montage titled "What It Takes," documenting my professional journey. I wrapped the box in expensive silver paper with a simple navy ribbon, Isabelle Industries colors. And then the final touch, a card that read, "From your biggest failure." 2 days before the gala, Daniel called. "Dad's been acting strange about the retirement," he said, his voice a little bewildered. "He keeps reviewing his speech, making changes. Maybe he's emotional about the transition," I suggested, trying to sound helpful. "Maybe," Daniel agreed, though he sounded unconvinced. "Anyway, he'll be glad you're coming." He mentioned it. That small comment, that simple phrase, "he mentioned it," kindled an unwelcome spark of hope inside me. Perhaps, finally, my father might acknowledge my achievements in his farewell address. Perhaps, at this significant juncture, he might truly see me for the first time. Julian offered to attend as moral support, but this felt like something I needed to face alone. "This is between me and him," I explained. "Having you there might make it easier, but easier isn't always better." The night before the gala, I sat in my home office, reviewing my portfolio, reminding myself of what I had built without the Isabelle name or resources. I stared at the wrapped box sitting on my coffee table, almost deciding not to bring it. The fear of more dismissal, more pain, was potent. Then I remembered my mother's words from years ago, words that had always anchored me. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is tell the truth. I placed the box carefully in a tote bag, ready for tomorrow. The Grand Marriott's Diamond Ballroom lived up to its name. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across round tables draped in white linen. Elaborate floral arrangements, orchids, roses, and lilies in precise white and blue combinations, anchored each centerpiece. Isabelle Industries banners hung strategically around the perimeter. 40 years of excellence and building America's future, displayed alongside the company's distinctive logo. I arrived precisely on time, slipping past the photographer who was capturing guests against a branded backdrop. The cocktail hour was in full swing. Business associates in dark suits mingled, champagne flutes in hand, their faces fixed with practiced smiles. "Isabelle, is that you?" My father's cousin Harold approached, martini in hand. "So you're still doing that architecture thing? Fascinating hobby." His tone, like so many others, implied mild surprise at my continued professional existence, as if I should have given up long ago and returned to the family fold. Similar interactions followed. Dad's golf buddies, board members, longtime executives, all offering variations of, "Your father must be proud," though their tone always suggested otherwise. Nathan spotted me first, waving from across the room where he stood with his wife, Clara, and Daniel with his wife, Julia. Our greetings were the usual shallow exchanges, compliments on outfits, brief mentions of recent vacations, carefully avoiding any substantive topics. "Dad's meeting with some Japanese investors in the corner," Nathan informed me, nodding toward a group of men near the bar. "You should say hello before things get started." The exchange with my father was predictably brief. He excused himself from his conversation as I approached, offering a mechanical half-hug. "Isabelle, you made it," he said, his eyes scanning my outfit. "Finally dressing professionally, I see." It was a backhanded compliment, a subtle jab about my past independent choices, implying my usual attire wasn't professional enough. "Congratulations on your retirement, Dad," I replied, ignoring the slight. "We'll talk later," he said, already looking past me to someone he deemed more important. "Your brothers put together quite an evening." The seating arrangement confirmed my place in the family hierarchy, a stark visual representation of my father's regard. Nathan and Daniel flanked our father at the head table, their wives beside them. I was assigned to table 19, alongside distant relatives and mid-level employees. The tote bag containing my gifts sat beside my chair as servers delivered the first course, a lobster bisque. I couldn't taste it, my throat was too tight, too choked with emotion. The program began after the main course, which I'd barely touched. A video screen lowered from the ceiling, and the lights dimmed for the tribute montage. Music swelled as images appeared. Gerald as a young entrepreneur, breaking ground on his first factory, shaking hands with governors and senators, receiving various business awards. The family section featured extensive footage of him coaching Nathan and Daniel in Little League, attending Daniel's college graduation, proudly standing between them at the opening of a new Isabelle Industries facility. And me? I appeared in exactly one photograph, a family portrait taken when I was about 10, before my mother's illness. There was no mention of my professional accomplishments, no acknowledgement of my existence beyond that single childhood image. It was as if I'd stopped existing once I chose a path outside the family business. Various colleagues took the podium next, praising Gerald's business acumen, negotiation skills, and family values. The CFO mentioned his dedication to preparing the next generation, looking pointedly at my brothers. Nathan and Daniel delivered a joint speech, highlighting their father's mentorship. "Everything we know about business we learned from watching Dad," Nathan declared. "His legacy lives on through the values he's instilled in us," Daniel added. It was a well-oiled performance, a seamless continuation of the narrative my father had always crafted. Finally, Gerald Isabelle took the podium to thunderous applause. At 65, he remained imposing, 6 feet tall, with silver hair and the confident posture of someone accustomed to commanding attention. He straightened his tie, a gesture I recognized from countless business dinners and family gatherings. It meant he was about to say something he considered important. 40 years, he began, his voice resonating through the ballroom, looking out over the crowd. 40 years of building something from nothing, from a warehouse in Cleveland to offices in 12 countries. He proceeded with the expected reflections. Challenges overcome, risks that paid off, loyal employees who contributed to the company's success. Then came the transition, the moment that would shatter my fragile hope and change everything. "People often ask me what I'm most proud of after 4 decades in business," he continued, his voice taking on a more personal tone. "That's easy. I'm proud of the legacy I'm leaving behind in my sons, Nathan and Daniel." He gestured toward them, his expression warming, his pride palpable. "They've proven they have what it takes to carry Isabelle Industries forward. They understand sacrifice, strategy, and the responsibility that comes with leadership." A pause. During it, he seemed to scan the room, and his gaze, inexplicably, fell on me. The room grew quieter, sensing the shift in tone, a ripple of unease moving through the guests. Unlike my daughter, who chose a different path, he continued, his voice devoid of emotion, as if discussing a disappointing investment. I used to worry about Isabelle, but I've accepted that she simply never had what it takes to be part of this world. Some people aren't cut out for real business. Scattered, uncomfortable laughter rippled through the audience. Several people glanced in my direction, their expressions ranging from pity to embarrassment. At the head table, Nathan studied his plate intensely, avoiding my gaze. Daniel went slightly pale, but remained silent, trapped in the awkwardness. A burning sensation spread across my chest, a fire of indignation and pain. The crystal chandelier light suddenly seemed too bright, the room too warm, too suffocating. I gripped the edge of the table, willing myself not to cry, not to give him the satisfaction of seeing me broken by his casual cruelty. Gerald continued his speech, detailing specific accomplishments of each son with pride evident in every word. Nathan's successful negotiation of the European expansion, Daniel's innovative supply chain restructuring, their joint leadership during the pandemic that kept Isabelle Industries profitable while competitors faltered. 5 minutes about my brother's business acumen. Not one word, more about his only daughter. When he finally concluded, the room erupted in a standing ovation. Businessmen and women rose to their feet, applauding the great Gerald Isabelle and the sons who would continue his legacy. I remained seated, one hand clutching the gift box I'd removed from the tote bag, the other clenched so tightly my nails left crescent marks in my palm. In that moment, a decision crystallized within me. The hope I had nursed, the tiny, foolish belief that he might finally see me, evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I stood, I smoothed my jacket. I picked up the box and began walking toward the stage. The click of my heels against the polished floor seemed unnaturally loud as conversation gradually quieted around me. 200 pairs of eyes followed my every move, a silent, captivated audience to the unfolding drama. I moved deliberately, maintaining eye contact with my father, who still stood at the podium, microphone in hand, accepting congratulations from those nearest the stage. His expression shifted from triumph to confusion as he registered my approach. Behind him, Nathan half rose from his seat, uncertain whether to intercept me. Daniel's hand moved to his brother's arm, subtly restraining him, a silent plea to let me continue. I ascended the 3 steps to the stage, fully aware of the collective gasp from the audience. My exterior remained calm. Years of presenting architectural concepts to critical clients, of navigating male-dominated spaces with unwavering professionalism, had taught me to project confidence regardless of my internal state. But inside, my heart hammered against my ribs, and a frantic voice screamed, "Run! Leave! Escape!" I silenced it. I continued forward. Gerald's smile tightened as I reached him, a reflexive business expression that didn't reach his eyes. "Isabelle," he said quietly, still holding the microphone, his voice a low warning. "This isn't the time." "Congratulations on your retirement, Dad," I said, my voice steady, despite the turmoil within. I looked him squarely in the eye. "I brought you something." I extended the silver-wrapped box toward him. He didn't immediately take it, his expression somewhere between annoyance and alarm. "This isn't the time for gifts, Isabelle," he repeated, louder now, a clear hint of warning in his tone. He wanted to shut me down, to make me disappear. "I think it's exactly the right time," I replied, my gaze unwavering, still holding the box between us. "It's from your biggest failure. Open it when I'm gone." I placed the package firmly in his hands, turned away from the microphone, and walked off the stage before he could respond. The silence in the ballroom was absolute. 200 people, frozen in collective discomfort, watched me. I descended the steps, head high, shoulders back, channeling every ounce of professional poise I'd cultivated over years of navigating male-dominated spaces. I walked past the head table where my brothers sat frozen, past the corporate executives with their shocked expressions, past distant relatives and family friends who suddenly found their dessert plates fascinating, through the grand double doors and into the hotel lobby with its subdued lighting and mercifully sparse occupancy. Only when I reached my car in the parking garage did my composure crack. Tears blurred my vision as I fumbled with the keys, finally collapsing into the driver's seat. Sobs wrenched from my chest, deep, gut-wrenching sobs. Years of disappointment, dismissal, and quiet rage poured out in a torrent I couldn't control. I gripped the steering wheel, pressing my forehead against its cool surface until my breathing steadied enough to drive. I pulled out of the garage, but made it only 3 blocks before I had to pull over again, overcome again by the magnitude of what had just happened. I had publicly challenged Gerald Isabelle, the untouchable patriarch. I had walked away from the pretense of family harmony we'd maintained for appearances. There would be no going back. My phone began buzzing with notifications, text messages from Nathan. "What did you give him?" Then, "Are you okay?" from Daniel. "Dad looks like he's seen a ghost." Then, "Call me." I silenced the phone and drove home in a strange state of emotional suspension, neither triumphant nor remorseful, just hollow, as if I'd spent every ounce of feeling I possessed. Julian was waiting in my apartment, having returned from his evening work event. One look at my face told him everything he needed to know. "That bad?" he asked, opening his arms. I collapsed into his embrace, allowing myself the comfort of being held while I recounted the evening, my father's public humiliation, my impulsive response, the gift I'd left behind. "It was everything I've saved for years," I explained, my voice raw from crying. "My diplomas, awards, press about my buildings, financials showing I earned more than Nathan and Daniel combined, Mom's letter about how proud she was of my determination, the USB with a video about my career." I paused, taking a shaky breath. "Everything he's refused to see or acknowledge." Julian stroked my hair gently. "And the note," he said, remembering what I told him. "It called you his biggest failure." "His words, not mine," I said, a bitter edge to my voice. "He's called me that to family members when he thought I couldn't hear. I wanted him to see exactly what his failure has accomplished." "What do you hope happens now?" Julian asked carefully. I considered the question, realizing I hadn't thought beyond the moment of walking out. "I don't know," I admitted honestly. "Maybe nothing. Maybe he'll finally see me for who I actually am, not who he wanted me to be. Maybe it doesn't matter anymore." But even as I spoke those words, I knew they weren't entirely true. If it didn't matter, I wouldn't have created the box in the first place. Back at the Grand Marriott, Gerald Isabelle stood motionless at the podium, still holding the silver-wrapped package, as the ballroom doors closed behind his daughter. The microphone, still active, captured his uneven breathing, amplifying it throughout the silent room. 200 guests remained frozen in collective discomfort, witnessing a family drama none had expected to be part of. Nathan approached the stage, leaning toward his father, his voice hushed. "Dad, we should continue with the program," he suggested quietly. "We can deal with this later." Gerald shook his head, a barely perceptible movement. His fingers gripped the box tighter, creasing the expensive wrapping paper. Without a word to his son, he began methodically removing the navy ribbon, then carefully separating the tape from the silver paper. The microphone picked up each sound. The whisper of paper, the slight tremor in his breathing. The plain white box underneath offered no hints about its contents. Gerald lifted the lid and stared inside, his expression transforming from irritation to confusion, then to something far more complex. One by one, he removed the items. First came the framed MIT diploma. Isabelle Isabelle's name emblazoned across it, with the distinction summa cum laude clearly visible to those nearest the stage. He placed it reverently on the podium, then withdrew her architecture license, studying it momentarily before setting it beside the diploma. The Hammond Award medal came next, its polished surface catching the light as he held it up briefly before recognizing what it was. A USB drive labeled "What It Takes" followed. Then a yellowed envelope addressed in handwriting that made him pause, recognition flickering across his features. Eleanor's handwriting, his late wife's letter to their daughter. He set it down quickly, as if it burned his fingers, and continued unpacking the box. Newspaper clippings, financial statements, photographs of sleek, modern buildings. Isabelle's award-winning designs constructed around the world. Finally, a single note card emerged from the bottom of the box. Gerald read it silently, his complexion paling visibly under the ballroom lights. His hand shook slightly as he placed it atop the other items. The note read, "You built buildings with steel and concrete. I build them with vision and heart. Both require what it takes. I learned to be strong by being your daughter, even when you couldn't see my worth. Goodbye, Dad." Gerald stared at the assembled evidence of his daughter's success. Success he had dismissed, diminished, or simply ignored for years. The microphone remained on, capturing his audible swallow as he attempted to regain his composure. He began, then stopped, words failing him for perhaps the first time in his professional life. He cleared his throat and tried again. I believe we'll conclude the formal portion of the evening. Please enjoy the remainder of the celebration. He gathered the items back into the box with uncharacteristic care and stepped away from the podium. Nathan quickly took his place. Thank you all for coming tonight to honor my father's legacy, he improvised, his professional smile firmly in place despite the tension evident in his voice. The bar will remain open, and I encourage everyone to enjoy the dessert buffet and live music. As the band began playing and guests cautiously resumed conversations, Gerald Isabelle sat alone at the head table, methodically examining each item from the box. He opened Eleanor's letter, reading his late wife's words of pride and encouragement to their daughter. He studied the financial statements, showing Isabelle's impressive income and investment portfolio. He held the Hammond Award, turning it over in his hands as if seeing it for the first time. Daniel approached cautiously, placing a hand on his father's shoulder. Dad, are you okay? Gerald looked up, his expression unreadable. What did she give you? Daniel asked, gesturing toward the items spread across the table. Gerald's response was barely audible above the band's music. Everything I was too blind to see. 1 week after the retirement gala, I immersed myself in work, grateful for the complex Riverside development project that demanded my complete focus. My colleagues at Schmidt and Wallace respected my privacy, though whispers followed me through the office. Architectural circles were small, and news traveled quickly. I'd become not just Isabelle Isabelle, award-winning architect, but Isabelle Isabelle, who publicly confronted Gerald Isabelle, business titan. My father had left 7 voicemails since that night. I hadn't listened to any of them. You should at least hear what he has to say, Maya suggested over lunch at our usual cafe. She'd heard about the incident through mutual acquaintances and had been checking on me daily, offering support. Even if it's just to get closure. I'm not ready, Pass, I admitted, pushing salad around my plate. Once I hear his voice, I'll be right back in that cycle, hoping for acknowledgement, being disappointed, making excuses for him. Fair enough, she conceded. But eventually you'll need to decide what kind of relationship you want going forward, if any. The unexpected visitor to my office that afternoon complicated my resolution to maintain distance. Nathan appeared in my doorway at 3:00 p.m., looking uncharacteristically disheveled in a wrinkled shirt, his usual confidence replaced by hesitation. Can I come in? He asked, hovering at the threshold. I gestured to the chair opposite my desk, saving my work before giving him my full attention. This is a surprise. Yeah, well, he ran a hand through his hair. Desperate times. What does that mean? I asked, my voice guarded. Nathan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Dad hasn't left the house since the party, Liz, he said, his voice quiet, almost pleading. He canceled the golf trip he's been planning for months. He's not taking calls from the board. Daniel and I are running interference, but people are starting to ask questions. That's not my problem, I replied, keeping my voice neutral, despite the unexpected twinge of concern that flickered through me. Gerald Isabelle had never missed a day of work in his life. This was truly unprecedented. He watched your USB, Nathan continued, ignoring my cool tone. The video about your career, he's played it dozens of times. Something shifted in my chest, a complicated emotion I wasn't prepared to examine. How do you know? I asked, a tremor in my voice. Because he called us over the day after the gala and made us watch it too, Nathan said, looking down at his hands. He lifted his gaze, meeting my eyes directly, an honesty I hadn't seen in him before. I had no idea, Liz. The international projects, the sustainability innovations, the community impact of your designs. None of it. You never asked, I pointed out, unable to resist the jab. No, I didn't, he admitted. I was too busy enjoying being the favorite. It was easier not to question the dynamic. His candor surprised me. Nathan had always been the diplomat of the family, smoothing over conflicts with practiced charm rather than addressing their root causes. Why are you here? I asked. He wants to talk to you, Nathan said, but he's respecting your silence. He knows he doesn't deserve your time. He's right about that, I said, the words a raw truth. Just, Nathan hesitated. Check your email. He sent something yesterday. After he left, I tried to focus on work, but curiosity eventually won out. I opened my personal email to find a message from my father, timestamped 2:13 a.m. the previous night. The subject line read simply, "I'm sorry." The body contained only 2 sentences. "I saw everything on the USB. I was wrong. Can we talk when you're ready?" I closed the email without responding and booked myself on a flight to Singapore the following week. A luxury hotel developer had requested a consultation on a sustainable renovation project. It was the perfect excuse to put 7,000 miles between myself and the Isabelle family drama. 3 days into my stay in Singapore, an architectural news alert caught my attention. My heart pounded as I read the headline. Isabelle Industries announces new green architecture division. The accompanying press release stated that Gerald Isabelle had postponed his retirement indefinitely to oversee the new initiative personally. My phone rang almost immediately. It was Daniel. "Did you see it?" he asked without preamble when I answered. "The press release just now?" "He's been researching sustainable building practices non-stop," Daniel said, his voice full of disbelief and a hint of pride. "He brought in consultants from 3 different environmental engineering firms. He's talking about retrofitting all Isabelle properties with solar and establishing new carbon-neutral manufacturing protocols." "That's unexpected," I managed, unsure how to process this information. "It's because of your video," Daniel continued, "especially the part about how traditional construction is responsible for 40% of carbon emissions globally. He keeps saying, she was right under my nose the whole time." I ended the call, promising nothing but feeling increasingly destabilized by these developments. Was this a genuine epiphany? A profound change driven by remorse? Or an elaborate manipulation to regain control of the narrative, to simply incorporate my different path into his empire? With Gerald Isabelle, it was impossible to be certain. Upon returning to Chicago 2 weeks later, I found a large package had been delivered to my apartment. The return address was my father's home. I let it sit unopened for 2 days, a strange mixture of apprehension and morbid curiosity warring within me, before caution again gave way to curiosity. Inside the package, I found a roll of blueprints secured with a simple black ribbon. Unfolding them across my dining table revealed detailed plans for a community center. Not Isabelle Industries' usual industrial or commercial project, but something altogether different, something softer, more humanitarian. Notes in my father's distinctive handwriting filled the margins. Questions about sustainable materials, natural lighting optimization, community engagement spaces. The proposed location was Franklin, Ohio, my mother's hometown, where she'd grown up in modest circumstances before earning a scholarship to Northwestern University, where she and my father had met. A letter accompanied the blueprints, handwritten on Gerald Isabelle's personal stationery. His handwriting, usually so crisp and authoritative, seemed to tremble slightly on the page. "Isabelle, these past weeks have been a time of painful but necessary reflection. The box you gave me, your mother would have called it a moment of reckoning, forced me to confront truths I've been avoiding for decades. I failed you as a father. I imposed limitations based on outdated beliefs rather than seeing your extraordinary gifts. I mistook your different path for rejection of my values, when in fact you embodied the best of them in ways I was too blind to recognize. You built something remarkable without my support, showing more of what it takes than I ever acknowledged. Your mother saw it. In her letter, she wrote that your determination would carry you further than my connections ever could. She was right, as she often was about important matters. The enclosed blueprints represent my first attempt at making amends. A community center in your mother's hometown, designed to provide educational resources, arts programming, and social services to an underserved community. I would be honored if you would consider offering your professional opinion on the design, and perhaps even consider being involved in its development. I understand if you need more time and space. When and if you're ready to talk, I am here, with respect and regret, Dad." I read the letter 3 times, searching for the usual undertones of manipulation or condescension, but found none. The blueprints, despite their technical flaws, clearly drawn by someone new to architectural principles, showed genuine thought and research. After 2 days of consideration, a decision, cautious but firm, settled within me. I texted my father, coffee at Lakefront Cafe, Wednesday, 10 o'clock a.m. His reply came instantly, I'll be there. The Lakefront Cafe was neutral territory, a place I frequented professionally but with no family associations. I arrived early, selecting a table with a view of Lake Michigan and ordering a cappuccino to steady my nerves. Gerald Isabelle arrived precisely at 10 o'clock, looking noticeably different than he had at his retirement gala. The impeccable suit remained, but he seemed somehow diminished, the habitual confidence replaced by a rare caution. He had aged visibly in the week since I'd last seen him. New lines around his mouth, a slight stoop to his shoulders I'd never noticed before. Isabelle, he said, standing awkwardly beside the table, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. Thank you for agreeing to meet. I gestured to the chair opposite mine. Would you like coffee? Black, please, he replied, arranging himself carefully in the seat, as if uncertain of his welcome. After the server took his order, silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken emotions. For the first time in memory, Gerald Isabelle seemed at a loss for words. The community center project, I finally said, breaking the silence. It's an interesting concept. Relief flickered across his features at this neutral opening. It needs work, he admitted. I've been researching, but there's no substitute for expertise. Why Franklin? I asked, though I suspected I knew the answer. Your mother always wanted to give back to her hometown, he replied, confirming my assumption. She talked about establishing a scholarship foundation, but after she got sick, he trailed off, glancing out at the lake, his gaze distant, tinged with old grief. I never followed through on that promise to her. Another silence, this one heavier with shared grief and regret. I watched your presentation, he said finally, his voice low. The USB. I've seen it 17 times now. A self-deprecating smile, fleeting and unfamiliar, briefly crossed his face. I counted, and I realized I've been wrong. Not just about you, but about what constitutes success, what matters. He met my eyes directly, his gaze earnest. Your Lakefront Commons project, the way it transformed that neighborhood, created affordable housing without sacrificing beauty, incorporated green spaces that brought the community together. That's legacy, Isabelle. That's building something that matters. The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable, a startling shift from the man I'd always known. Still, years of disappointment made me cautious. What changed? I asked, my voice steady. Besides seeing my achievements laid out where you couldn't ignore them? He considered the question carefully, a thoughtful pause I'd never witnessed before. Your note, he finally said, his voice almost a whisper, about building with vision and heart. It reminded me of something your mother once said after I dismissed one of your childhood designs. He swallowed visibly, a lump in his throat. She said I was so focused on building an empire that I couldn't see you were building a better world. My throat tightened at this unexpected echo of my mother, a pang of bittersweet grief and understanding. The night before she died, he continued, his voice roughening with emotion, tears welling in his eyes. Eleanor made me promise to support your dreams, whatever they might be. I failed that promise spectacularly. He paused, taking a breath. Did you know she confronted me about how I treated you differently from your brothers? I shook my head multiple times, stunned. The last time was about a month before her diagnosis, he said. She said I was creating a self-fulfilling prophecy, that by expecting less of you because you were a girl, I was teaching you to expect less of yourself. He stared into his coffee, lost in the memory. She was wrong about that part. You never limited yourself despite my best efforts to make you believe you should. The raw honesty of his words penetrated defenses I'd built over decades. It was the validation I had unknowingly craved for so long. I spent years wanting your approval, I admitted, the words spilling out, hoping each achievement would finally be enough to make you see me. I know that now, he replied quietly. Nathan and Daniel have been quite forthcoming about my failures since the gala. Then a hint of his old dry humor, a glimmer of the man he used to be, now tempered with humility. Family therapy has been enlightening. Family therapy? I couldn't hide my surprise, a small laugh escaping my lips. Twice weekly, he confirmed, a faint smile on his lips. Gerald Isabelle on a therapist's couch. Who would have thought? Not me, I acknowledged. a reluctant smile tugging at my lips. "About the community center," he said, returning to safer ground, the blueprints on the table between us. "I'd like you to consider being the lead architect. No strings attached, your vision, your terms." I studied him carefully, searching for a hidden agenda, but found none. "And if I say no?" I asked. "Then I find another architect and respect your decision," he replied without hesitation. "This isn't about manipulating you back into the family fold, Isabelle. It's about recognizing your expertise and offering an opportunity one should have offered years ago." I considered his offer, weighing professional interest against emotional self-protection. This wasn't just a project, it was a bridge. "I'll review the proposal," I finally said professionally. "That's all I can commit to right now." "That's more than I deserve," he acknowledged, a genuine note of humility in his voice. We finished our coffee, discussing the technical aspects of the project, budget constraints, timeline, community input processes. For the first time in our relationship, he listened more than he spoke, asking questions rather than pronouncing judgments. As we prepared to leave, he hesitated. "Your brothers would like to see you when you're ready. One step at a time," I replied, neither committing nor refusing. The door was ajar, not fully open, but no longer bolted shut. Over the following weeks, that single coffee meeting evolved into regular project discussions. I redesigned significant portions of the community center, incorporating sustainable materials, community-centered spaces, and flexible usage areas that truly reflected modern needs. Gerald asked questions, offered suggestions without imposing them, and deferred to my expertise in ways that would have been unimaginable months earlier. It was a professional relationship, built on mutual respect for our respective fields, something entirely new between us. After 6 weeks of professional interaction, a cautious peace began to settle over me. I tentatively accepted an invitation to dinner at Daniel's home. Nathan and his wife attended, along with my father. The conversation was initially strained, a delicate dance around years of established patterns, not easily broken. But then, when Daniel's wife, Julia, asked about my current projects, Gerald spoke before I could answer. "Isabelle's redesign of the community center is revolutionary," he said, surprising everyone at the table. "The solar array integration alone will reduce operating costs by 30 compared to traditional construction." Nathan nearly choked on his wine, his eyes wide with shock. I bit back a smile at his reaction. "Dad's been taking night classes in environmental design principles," Daniel explained, recovering first. "Won't let anyone else handle the community center project. It's important to get it right," Gerald said simply, a quiet conviction in his tone. As dinner progressed, I noticed subtle but significant shifts in our family dynamic. My brothers deferred to me on topics within my expertise, rather than speaking over me, a newfound respect in their eyes. Gerald asked detailed questions about my recent Tokyo project, showing genuine interest in the cultural considerations that had influenced my design. Most surprisingly, when conversation turned to Isabelle Industries' new initiatives, Gerald actively sought my input. "Your perspective as an outsider with relevant expertise is valuable," he said, using words I never expected to hear from him. "We've been too insular in our thinking." 6 months later, we gathered at the groundbreaking ceremony for what was now officially named the Eleanor Isabelle Community Center. Local officials, community representatives, and the press assembled around the ceremonial shovel station. Gerald approached me as we waited for the program to begin. "Would you speak today?" he asked in a gentle request. "It should be you, not me." I agreed, surprising myself almost as much as him. The urge to step back, to let him take the credit, was strong, but I knew this was important. When the time came, I stepped to the microphone and surveyed the gathered crowd. "This center represents more than just a building," I began. "It's about foundations. Both the physical foundation will begin today and the human foundations that shape communities and families." I spoke about my mother's connection to Franklin, her unwavering belief in education and community support, her vision of creating opportunities for others. I spoke about sustainable architecture as an investment in future generations, a way to build not just for today, but for tomorrow. "Every building tells a story," I concluded, my voice clear and strong. "The story this one will tell is about transformation, second chances, and the power of seeing potential where others might not." As applause rippled through the audience, I caught my father's eye. The pride in his expression was unmistakable. Not the conditional approval I'd sought for so long, but genuine respect, a recognition between equals. At the reception afterward, I overheard him speaking to the mayor of Franklin. "My daughter taught me what really matters," he said, not knowing I was within earshot. "And she definitely has what it takes." Those words, so different from the ones he'd uttered at his own retirement, brought a warmth to my chest I hadn't felt in years. Later that evening, as the event concluded, he approached me with a small package. "One more thing," he said, uncharacteristically hesitant. "I found this while going through some storage boxes." I unwrapped the package to find a crude architectural model I'd built at age 7. It was a cardboard and popsicle stick creation, my childhood dream house, complete with solar panels, aluminum foil, and a rooftop garden, green construction paper. My very first attempt at green construction. "Your mother kept it," he explained, his voice soft, full of memory. "She always said you had a vision that was ahead of your time." The simple model represented everything: my childhood dreams, my mother's unwavering faith, the talent my father had finally recognized, finally seen. In that moment, I understood that reconciliation wasn't about forgetting the past, about pretending the pain never happened, but about building something new atop its foundation, just as I'd done with so many architectural projects. "Thank you," I said, carefully holding the fragile model, a tremor in my voice. "No," he replied quietly, his eyes meeting mine, full of a newfound vulnerability. "Thank you for not giving up on architecture, on yourself, or even on me, despite every reason I gave you to do so." As we stood together, looking out at the ceremonial, groundbreaking site under the fading evening light, I realized that the box I'd given him at his retirement had accomplished something I never anticipated. It hadn't just forced him to see me, it had begun to transform him. And in that transformation, it had created space for something neither of us had thought possible. A relationship built on mutual respect rather than obligation. It was a second chance for both of us. So tell me, have you ever had to stand up to someone who underestimated you? How did you show them what you're really capable of? Share your story in the comments below. If this video resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more content about family relationships and personal growth. Remember to share this with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't determined by others' limited perceptions. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the greatest gift we can give others is showing them who we truly are, even when it's difficult.